Okay, welcome everybody. This is the UAA Campus Facilities Master Plan Update session. And my name is Kim Mahoney. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities and Campus Services. And I want to thank you for joining us on such a nice day and for contributing to this session. We have been working on this master plan for quite a while, and we hope that you come to us in this meeting today by some familiarity with the work that we've been doing. We did post a town hall session from a couple of weeks ago that went into a little bit more detail about our current state. Today, we're testing the water on where we think we're headed. And I preface that because it's an opportunity for us to share where we think the next step is going to be in the framework of our campus facilities master plan. And so the engagement today will help us in that information and contribute toward where we end up. One of the components that we are hoping to stand tall on is the work that has already been done relating to our mission change that was adopted by the Board of Regents last year, recognizing the role that we have in our community, but also offering a respect and honor to the ancestral lands of the First Peoples. So with that, we also are standing tall on the vision of our university and how the master plan can respond to those initiatives that have already been collaborated on. So you will see some similarities in some of the language that we're using relating to UAA 2025, and you will also see some similarities in the languages that we're using related to the Alaska Native Success Initiative that was adopted by the Board of Regents last fall. So the master plan is perhaps can be thought of as a transformational look as to an aspirational goal of how we go forward. And I will let some of my other folks start talking because there is a good presentation that they're going to be giving you today. But I want to say that there is some problems that we're trying to address. We've got low enrollments. We've got a lot of deferred maintenance. We have some really great buildings on campus that are newer, but we also have some old buildings that really haven't been invested in a long time on all of our campuses. And so, how do we go forward? How do we start to transform? And that's what we're trying to communicate here, like in this vision that you're going to see today. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce the members of the team here that you might be hearing from. Chris McConnell, would you introduce yourself, please?
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for the incredible turnout. I'm Chris McConnell. For those of you who aren't aware, I get to serve as the Director of Facilities Planning and Construction. Okay.
And Brian, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Brian Meisner. I'm an architect based in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm leading the planning team, the consultant team that is supporting the facilities planning and construction group, Kim and her group, on this update. And I also was heavily involved in the 2013 campus master plan that we're starting from.
And the last introduction I'd like to give is for Jack Fowler. Jack?
Hey, I'm Jack Fowler, an architect and campus planner with the University of Alaska, Anchorage.
Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Jack, if I'm not mistaken. Is it Jack or Brian next?
Brian's going to take the start here.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to take the first bit. Here's our agenda for today. So you can see what we're going to take you through. We're going to talk about the stakeholder engagement process thus far, which has been quite robust. And then we're going to talk about some of the strategies that came out of that stakeholder engagement process. hit briefly on existing conditions, not nearly as much as we did for the last town hall, and then campus by campus, take you through where we think this is pointing us. And this is your opportunity to help give us some clarity in that direction, or challenge that direction, or give us the thumbs up if you hear things you like. So that's going to be the Anchorage campus, as well as the other campuses in the University of Alaska Anchorage system. And we'll finish with just a glimpse at the schedule, so you can see how this is going to unfold, get ratified and developed into a full campus master plan by next fall, which is our goal. So the first thing we want to do is talk about the stakeholder engagement process. It's been a year long. We started a little over a year ago, last spring, with engagement that primarily involved the campus planning steering committee. We looked at issues of placemaking, looked at issues of equity and inclusion, and looked at issues of sustainability. And then this summer, it became clear that we needed to go much deeper and try to get some personal feedback from students and from faculty and from community members. So this past fall, we initiated a web survey as well as an in-person survey. That included a map where you could share feelings about the campus, launched a project website for the master plan efforts. We had an effort where we did some we empowered a member of our team to go out and do one-on-one interviews with BIPOC students, gathered some amazing feedback there. And then Jack and I did a tour of UAA groups, met with different academic clusters, all the vice chancellors, and a whole bunch of other different groups in listening sessions this spring. So what that resulted in was a completely different type of engagement and feedback than we had in 2013. 2013, everything was going great. But in 2022, we've been through a lot since 2013 that we never anticipated, most recently a pandemic. So we found the feedback to be a lot more visceral, and in many cases, a lot more meaningful. So I'm going to push the right button to go forward. So through that engagement, a series of themes developed. And this is an outgrowth of all of those different types of engagement, not one in particular. So one may have been the spark, but we began to see seeds of these in many different types of engagement. I'm not going to spend much time on this page because we go into a little more detail as we move forward. I want to share this little bit. The one-on-one interviews were very powerful because it enabled us to go much deeper than we did in 2013 into the experience of individual students and individual faculty. And it lended us quotes and other descriptions of experiences that help us to better understand what it means to be on the University of Alaska campuses and the Anchorage campus and all the community campuses in particular. And that helps us to think about what we want the vision to be moving forward. So you're going to see a transformation in how we're thinking about the buildings and the zones on each campus now versus what we were thinking in 2013. We're looking much more through the lens of student experience, campus experience, and community experience, whereas before it was more just focused on academics. So one of the first themes was density matters. Many comments about what it feels like to be on campus when there aren't that many people on campus. It was exacerbated by the pandemic, but it speaks a little bit to the decrease in enrollment that's happened since 2011 is when the decline started. It was just accelerated dramatically through the last few years with first a recession and then a pandemic. But it has us thinking about ways to increase density of students on each campus in the right locations. So there's one big idea in particular for the Anchorage campus that you're going to see multiple times, and it's this second bullet down of transforming the campus spine into a river concept. And the concept is to bring as much as possible first and second year experiences to the spine to energize that space, because we had a lot of good comments and feedback about that space for what it was and what it could be, but a really strong desire to add additional bodies in that space so it felt active and engaged and became an engaged learning environment. So when we speak about the spine, this is a little bit of a side. We're talking about that portion of campus that's connected by indoor space from Rasmussen Hall all the way to the library. In the past, master plans have tried to extend that spine into the landscape spaces at the west and the east, which in this diagram we're thinking of as a west quad because it's more a manicured landscape, and at the east as an Alaskan quad because it's that place where the kind of wild green belt of Anchorage and Alaska pulls into campus. But for the sake of the update, we're thinking more of just the enclosed portion of the spine, and that's what we're thinking of as potentially a river. So the second big theme, identity, is important. In 2013, there was a lot of talk about creating a recognizable front door for the Anchorage campus. At that time, we weren't doing an update for the community campuses, and this time we are. But through the engagement, it's become clear that the identity of what it means to be at University of Alaska Anchorage, in Anchorage, or at one of the community campuses became a driving theme. And it was interesting to hear how important it is for each campus to have its own identity within the system that would appeal to and meet the needs of its individual community. Outward-facing student support is effective. So in 2013, we talked about the need to bring student services back to main campus to the degree possible and make them student-facing and easy to access. And there's been a lot of good work done in that way. But we're hearing more and more that there are other services that need to be, it's a balance of making them more findable and present and have a sense of importance while retaining that sense of independence and identity. So ANSEP was given as an example several times. That building is on its own, but people know where it is, has a very strong identity, and has a very strong sense of place once you're in there that's appropriate and comfortable and feels safe. Other spaces aren't quite operating at that level right now, and there is opportunity to improve how that could function in the future. And then lots of talk about improving wellness throughout, and wellness as well as accessibility throughout. The last three strategies, public and community access is vital. A well-kept home shows attention and strength, and community engagement and collaborative experiences are critical. These are related. It's about tending to what you have, doing that well, and doing that in a way that welcomes students and faculty in, as well as welcoming the community and the public. And coming on the heels of the pandemic, we went through a time where most of the doors were locked. I think almost all the doors were locked at one time. They've started opening up again, but there's some work to be done to let the community know that the doors are open. And then there's some work that can be done at a planning level on the campus to make those front doors more clear, make the parking that accesses those front doors more easy. And as we start thinking more and more about the campus as a place that hosts not just the University of Alaska faculty and students, but also collaborative partners who might be able to strengthen the educational opportunities there, and share in that density and of space. So this is where we get a little bit into the existing conditions, and I'm going to hand it off to Jack pretty quick. I think I'm going to go ahead and take this slide, Jack. So we've done a series of diagrams where we're thinking of how this campus fits into the green space of Anchorage and to the broader Alaskan landscape. And so this is one of the drawings on the left here where that starts to be seen very well. You can see the campus in pink as part of the Moose Loop, which those of you who bike know that pretty well. It's one of my favorite places to bike in town. But this diagram also shows how that green space connects to the waterways that go up into the Chugach and the exciting parkway up at Far North Bicentennial Park, Campbell Tract, and those areas. And so it's one of the things that makes the campus very unique. It's a campus in the Alaskan landscape. So it's on the edge of city, making it an urban campus, but it's got this natural landscape that's flowing into it. So there was a lot of feedback during engagement that, hey, let's look for ways to celebrate that unique identity and those experiences so that that's a reason that people think of and identify with the University of Alaska Anchorage, especially the main campus. And as we take this type of thinking to the other campus, we're developing thoughts about how they fit within their town. And we'll share some of that when we get to those later. Jack, I think I'll hand off to you at this point and just let me know when to change slides.
Will do. Thanks, Brian. So like we talked about in the last slide, we're going to start to look at some diagrams, some maps, and some data that help maybe explain where we are, the existing condition, and it's going to kind of set the groundwork for some of these strategies. for the place that we came from. So the Anchorage campus historic enrollment trends. These are important because it's what defines how we project into the future, what buildings we plan for, what improvements we plan for in the future. Past master plans have utilized projections to make plans for the future. What you see here on the left in gray are those projections. From about 1982 to 2021, you see actual campus enrollment. And you can see that they don't correlate. There's an aspirational projection, and then there's the actual. So what we're looking forward to as we create this master plan, as we draft this master plan together, is trying to understand a mechanism, a flexible mechanism to adapt to unanticipated changes. Some of those unanticipated changes that Brian mentioned at the start, things we didn't understand or couldn't possibly predict when we were in 2013. And we want to understand a flexible future in terms of growth and decline and flat. We don't know, but we need to accommodate all possibilities. The other thing it mentions is our low campus enrollment right now. We are at dramatically low campus enrollment numbers, and we need to make accommodations for that as we deal with the world as it is, and as we hope to and work on growing enrollment for the future. The slide on the right, or the chart on the right, talks about our actual campus enrollment as a percent change from 1982 to 2021 relative to our new construction highlighted in yellow. You'll see that, again, very divergent. This makes sense, actually, because we're a frontier campus. We started essentially from nothing. And we slowly built up our capacity to both meet the demand within Alaska and also compete with other universities. There's a point where these lines make sense. There comes a point where they diverge to a certain point where it stops to make as much sense. Maybe that point's around 2011, like Brian mentioned. In 2011, our enrollment started to separate from the amount of construction that we were facilitating on campus. Next slide. So this focus, this intent to focus on vibrancy on the main campus, that's been going on for a long time. Since 2013, we have created a plan for the university, for the master plan, that identified satellite parcels to sell or lease, or satellite leases, satellite from the main campus, that the university held to vacate. And we've accomplished a fair amount of that. 7th and A, Kodiak Eagle River campus, University Center, the Diplomacy Building, and a lease held at the University Lake Building. These are all university occupancies that were brought back to the main campus. And what that did is increased vibrancy on the main campus. There were issues with how that was completed, as we're still working on them, but it's a success in terms of our past strategies that we want to continue and focus on. So you know that our office complex and the Laurel Street lot are also satellite properties that the university owns, that they are currently creating plans to bring those occupants back to main campus. Those are in the works. Next slide. Shift gears here a little bit. We're going to talk about a thing called academic and student clusters. Now, first, the definition of what that is. Academic and student clusters are groups, programs, demographics, departments, colleges, schools that share synergies on campus in academia, and also share synergies outside of campus, maybe in industry. There's 5 academic clusters listed here and 4 student clusters listed. We're going to walk you through maps that define those 5 academic clusters. And it's going to talk to a couple of different things. It's going to talk to our existing condition, but we're also going to talk about strategies, why we're talking about those strategies that we're trying to implement in the master plan, because we've been told by the administration and the student and faculty body that they're important. We're trying to implement strategies utilizing the academic clusters for the future. I explain those in a little bit.
Hello, we're ready to kick off the town hall for the
So for first cluster, this is a really great cluster in defining that synergy on campus versus the synergy off campus. It's the business and industry. The two components of this cluster are College of Business and Public Policy and components of community and technical colleges that speak to industry, to trade, to business. What you see here in blue on the campus map are the spaces on campus that cluster, that those two components occupy. Go to the next slide. This is the College of Health. This is a bit of an outlier because there's only one component to this college, or excuse me, to this cluster. But you'll note here that there's 4 different locations on campus. That's a theme. If you go to the next slide, Arts and Humanities cluster. Now you start to see an existing condition. An existing condition of Arts and Humanities clusters on the West campus, along the spine, and on East campus. It's a very thin spread. So as we have low enrollment, as we have low occupancy, as we are thinly spread across campus, those are all movements forcing the downward trend of vibrancy on campus. So as we think about these clusters, maybe we want to start to bring them together because these are folks that want to talk to one another. These are folks that want to share the same space. Maybe as opportunities arise, we think about the cluster coming together. Also, we want to understand that as these opportunities arise, as groups come to us and request a relocation or relocation is required, we want to think about that relocation not in terms of their specific academic silo, say College of Business or College of Fine Arts. We want to think about them in terms of the cluster. So in a way, it identifies as a strategy to bring folks together, like-minded folks together, but it's also a way to broaden sort of like the limitations or entitlements that a relocation could be privy to. Let's go to the next slide. This is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We are all across campus on this cluster. Some of these buildings are great, like the ANSEP buildings. Some of them in the engineering and industry building, some of them need a little bit of work. Some of them are a little bit old, like Kim mentioned at the front. Some of them have some deferred maintenance that we need to address. And the final cluster, social and behavioral sciences. Again, very thin across campus, very thin spread. Imagine being a part of this cluster, a student, faculty, staff member in this cluster. Your world is all across campus. It's spread very thin. You might not run into the people you want to run into, and we want to think about that for the future. Next slide. Kim mentioned our our student services. We want to be cognizant of where our student services are across campus. Right now, just like the clusters, they are all across campus. There's a thin line, imaginary line that a student would have to take to get from one to the other in a single path or a single trip, a single day. We want to think about how these can come together, improving this experience for the student. Next slide. Our Alaska Native program locations. ANSI, the board approved Alaska Native Strategic Initiative, is something that we are coordinating with and focusing on. What you see here across the map are program locations for Alaska Native programs on the Anchorage campus. And just like everything else, they're spread quite thin across campus. There's a great distance between a lot of them. Some of them are in fantastic spaces, like ANSEP buildings. Everyone knows the ANSEP space. Some of them are not in fantastic spaces. And ANSI, goal 3, I think initiative 3 under goal 3 or strategy 3 under goal 3 is to make sure that all Alaska Native program locations are in fantastic, great spaces, student-facing spaces, spaces that are easy and comfortable and put that student first. Next slide. What you see here are 4 campus zones, and we're going to talk about them in terms of campus experience, student experience, community experience, and an aspiration and a vision. There's another thing that sort of defines these zones. And it's the buildings, it's the space. As Brian mentioned in the front of the presentation, West Campus. West Campus is defined by courtyards and sort of traditional academic plazas. To be in that space is to feel a consistency of those courtyards and plazas and low-rise buildings. The campus spine, the red space, is a series of buildings whose main entry is along this elevated pathway. The East Campus, these are buildings that are in the trees. There's not a plaza, there's not a courtyard, there's not an elevated entry. There's almost like a trail between each one of them. That's how you experience the space. And then the residential campus. That is like a unique, clustered residential development. It has its own space. And so as we think about campus cohesiveness, as we think about vibrancy, we need to recognize that if we're asking somebody to move from West Campus along the spine to East Campus to residential campus, we're asking them to not just move through all the different programs that are happening in those spaces, but we're asking them to move through several different types of space, several different ways to interact with their neighbors and the people that they move past. And that decreases the cohesiveness you would feel on campus. This is a very sort of like brick and mortar description of these zones. And it's important if we want to talk about cohesiveness on campus. Next slide. The campus spine. So as Kim mentioned, we want to focus on the campus spine. There's a lot of problems on the campus spine that we need to focus on. There's some turns, there's some some 180s, some stairs, there's some dead ends. We want to focus on that. We also want to take a moment to create an experience, an engaged and sort of close-knit, engaged learning experience on the Anchorage campus. We also want it to be the front door for the Anchorage campus, or at least a component of it facing that front door. As we mentioned, it's a collection, the campus experience, the feeling of the space. It's a collection of low-rise buildings, mostly from the 1980s. They're all connected with this spine. They all have a lot of deferred maintenance. The student experience, the student comes here because they want to engage in the student services. There's quite a few of them located along the spine. And there's also some unique specialized spaces in, for instance, the engineering computation building and the natural science building. From a community standpoint, this is the way the community members are going to share social spaces at the west end and share spaces on the east end of campus. They're going to use this to get back and forth. Next slide. The campus experience on East Campus. Again, this is a collection of mixed buildings. Some of them are from the 80s. Some of them are quite simple and kind of tough. Some of them, like the Phillips building, are these great specialized spaces of research, of unique laboratory spaces. There's the Alaska Airlines Center. Currently, the focus of the master plan is to increase the presence, increase the focus, investment on those specialized instruction spaces in science and art, as well as general education in the humanities, like currently the School of Education located in the administration building. We want to recognize that the community utilizes the Alaska Airlines Center, especially right now, since like the Sullivan Arena is in a transitional moment. We know that the community experience at the Alaska Airlines Center is important for Anchorage, just like ASD holding their graduation there. It's important, and we want to accentuate that and offer it. We want to know that the furthest building out, the furthest building in the trees, the Fine Arts Building, is a major component for the community. Everything the Fine Arts Building creates is for the community. It's for viewing. It's for somebody else. It's for somebody else to see, to listen, to participate in. And we want to make sure that that's focus and that's a location for future investment. Next slide. West Campus. West Campus has become a major component for health, business, industry, and engineering. It has the Wendy Williams Auditorium. We want to aspire to invest in those spaces and continue to support them as they achieve their vision, putting the student first. Right now, we need to understand that it's a collection of low-rise buildings. It's sort of an academic, traditional quad space. And it sort of holds together on its own in that way. And we want to maintain that. It's currently the home to first and second year learning experiences. We want to support those first and second year learning experiences, but maybe not on West Campus, and we can get to that later. Next slide. And then finally, the residential campus. Residential campus, we want to understand that right now, it's we want to focus on an aspiration to attracting tenants year round. We want to offer an array of tenant opportunities, family, daycare. We want to focus on the first and second year student experience. So we really want to talk about an array of experiences at the residential campus. We want to understand that the community experience at the residential campus could include things like guest housing, traditional Alaska Native events. We understand it is right next to the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. Excuse me. And we want to understand that it's also a separate and unique space that directly engages the Chester Creek. A little bit like East Campus, it's accessed in the trees through trails. And we want to improve that, and we want to invest in it. Next slide. So we kind of walked you through the slides, or excuse me, through the zones. We want to bring you back and talk about a couple of really key sort of links between those zones. We've talked about their differences and their uniqueness. We want to show you how the 4 different zones, or 3 different campus zones, are connected by a student service, a student support. The library, Student Learning Commons, is sort of like a joint that holds East Campus to the spine. As the student services offered in the Alaska Airlines Center, the Student Union, and the Enrollment Services Building on West Campus are sort of the link to the spine from West Campus. That is a magnificent existing condition that we want to focus on. If we want to create, as we mentioned before, an engaged learning experience that caters a little bit to that first and second year student, this provides us an opportunity to house that engaged learning experience between student services. It's like a protected, safe, bounded space for that experience. That's an opportunity that we want to invest in. We want to aggressively seek, through that practice, funding to eliminate the deferred maintenance that we previously mentioned was along the spine. There's a lot of it. We want to use an opportunity to address that maintenance and improve the student experience for first and second years. And we want to improve, support, and focus the student services that are both the joint between West Campus and East Campus, but also a potential front door for a lot of student activity. Next slide. I jumped ahead. This is a slide that has arrows that talk about that experience. The student experience, maybe first and second year student experience that's currently on West Campus. Some of those experiences that are currently on East Campus. There's an opportunity to bring those to the campus spine, placing them in between student services. We want to create modern unique learning environments, natural light, updated technology, and collaborative learning. Collaborative is important here because we want to provide those students the opportunity to engage with an array of folks and also create an attraction with that modern learning experience from West and East Campus to come engage with those first and second year students in spaces currently already on the spine, like the Natural Science Building and the Engineering Computational Building. Next slide. And I think I'm going to pass it back to Brian as he takes us through our community campuses.
I'm imagining most people on the line today are from Anchorage campus and are focused there. There are a couple of folks from some of the community campuses, and it's important to consider those as part of the University of Alaska Anchorage system. Previously, in the kind of early 2000s, each campus had its own standalone master plan, and most of them are at least 10 years old. The intent with this update is to capture each campus and its unique identity in a separate chapter in the overall campus master plan for all of the University of Alaska Anchorage. And so we have a couple of slides each just to highlight some of the main themes that have come up. We're going to start with Kenai Peninsula College, which has two campuses. It has the Kenai River campus, which we'll focus on first, and then the Kachemak Bay campus. So the Kenai River campus in Soldotna. The campus and student experiences is originally, the original buildings are a collection of mixed vintage buildings that are connected in kind of by a spine like the Anchorage camp space, but except it's not raised. And it's along the river bluff, along the Kenai River bluff. So it has this connection to what gives Kenai and Soldotna their identity, that river, which is known worldwide, but it has this connection back to the town of as well of Soldotna. It's frequented by community members for its offerings as a green space. It has great hiking trails and great fishing accessible from and through there. And it's the learning hub of the central Kenai Peninsula. And you'll see on the next map, it has two satellite buildings that have strong workforce development identities, as well as residential housing, some pretty new dorms that are just across the street. The aspiration vision is to become the hub of learning on the Kenai Peninsula, giving students opportunities to gain the skills that they need to reach their ambitions. It's a mix of liberal arts training and career technical training. It also has some strong focuses on skills that are needed to support the oil and energy industries in Alaska. We asked each of the community campus to identify goals or other things that might have potential facility impacts, as well as collaborators who might be able to share space with them at this time when enrollment's down and there's a desire to bring vibrancy to many of them as well. And so for the case of the Kenai River campus, there's consideration for a semester by the river program. There's a similar program that's offered at the Kachemak Bay campus already, but to give a focus on place-based learning experiences to draw upon the richness, cultural and natural of its location along the Kenai River. Something that's not mentioned here is that the campus has a very strong connection to the sociology and archaeology of the area. They're doing some really wonderful work with the Kenai tribe, and it's something that would be a strong gem in the semester by the river experience. There are some spaces, like any of the community campuses, there are some career technical programs that change more rapidly than the more traditional offerings of a college or university. And so there's just a goal to keep those flexible so that they can change and adapt over time as the needs of industry and the desires of the community change and adapt. And then there's a need for some additional support space to support the working side of keeping things running at the institution. As potential collaborators, they've identified the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District. There's a developing relationship around a middle school, which is starting to thrive. I mentioned the archaeological program and the connection with the Kenai tribe. There are several opportunities on the peninsula, and what's kind of unique, I think, and really done well at this campus is, I believe it was in the Goodrich building on the second floor, the space that houses that sociology aspect is very student facing forward, glassy, it draws you in, has a beautiful view to the river, and it feels important. It's a nice place to visit, and they've done a nice job of that. And then they're also looking for partners potentially to help occupy some of the housing, at least until enrollment gets back up, and other University of Alaska entities. The MAPS building right now, I believe, is an entity that is UAF primarily affiliated. Moving down to Homer, the Kachemak Bay campus, completely different experience. This campus is set right in the middle of Homer, adjacent to City Hall. We had a meeting there, and you can walk a block and have a beer and a taco. It's very much part of the life of downtown Homer. Almost felt like a social hub. The aspiration vision for this campus is to be the intellectual hub of learning from K through 12 to post-secondary life and a lifelong learning on Kachemak Bay. You see that in a lot of the program offerings at the Kachemak Bay campus. There are, I think, a much higher percentage of non-credit courses that are sometimes offered for or not for credit, teaching skills, investing in things like high tunnel farming, outboard motor repair, arts, culture, other things that make it part of Homer. One of the challenges is that it feels like the campus that's in a growth mode of them all, but it's bound pretty tightly in downtown. The two buildings currently that make up the campus occupy about all the available land while still meeting minimum parking requirements for that part of Homer. And so growth opportunities on campus are somewhat limited, and yet there's a demand for several other amenities that would be shared in conjunction with other collaborators in Homer, and several of those are listed here. Collaborators with potential for space sharing are many. It's South Kenai Peninsula Industries, nonprofits. Kenai is becoming the hub, kind of the retreat hub of Alaska, Kenai or Sitka, and Kenai, Homer or Sitka, and Homer's probably the one that's thriving more because it's accessible by road. I can't tell you how many groups we've helped develop little retreat camps, and they're the type of groups, authors groups, and other things that would benefit from relationship with the Kachemak Bay campus. Moving to Kodiak, it's a different campus experience of its own. It's set in a large, quiet green space, a bit of a drive from downtown, a wonderful trail network with, I don't know if it's old growth, but it feels like old growth forest surrounding it. It's a little campus that sits in the middle of this wonderful green space. They do have an offsite lease space for their career technical program, which has some challenges. And one of the desires is to address that and get it into better and more appropriate space. So the aspiration is to continue to be the hub of lifelong learning in Kodiak and support the industry that's there, which includes Coast Guard. Fishing is a big part of Kodiak, and giving them the skills that they need either to take that next step to a university degree, grab a 2-year degree, or grab some career tech skills that are going to help local industry. Here you get a good sense of that campus set in the green space. So its goals with potential facility impacts are first that career and technical need. They need something better than what they have. And so the idea is to seek out something that might be in partnership with someone else, and if not, build a simple facility. I laughed at Jace because she said non-architecturally designed, and she told that to 2 architects. But what she's wanting is a really simple building that they can teach skills in. And they are starting to develop a relationship with the local school district, especially through the early middle college. Moving out to Matsu. Matsu is a campus that the core part has a lot of cohesiveness. Most of the buildings are connected. There's like a mini spine that goes over a ravine there. And then several of the original buildings are directly connected to one another. And then the newest building is the Massey Theater, which has become a real hub for culture in the Valley. A lot of community members value that highly. It's also set in a much broader green space that includes the Kepler Bradley State Park and some UAF land and some University of Alaska land that have developed into a trail network that many of us from South Central Alaska visit on a pretty regular reoccurring basis. And if you're in the Matsu Valley, that's your hub of play. It's described here as the Central Park, but it's not Central Park as you would think of in an urban area. It's just this beautiful wooded place that sits on these moraines. The aspiration vision is to continue to provide an introduction to the college experience for a whole diverse group of students. And then more and more, that includes high school and even middle school students. The middle college is quite strong in the Mat-Su Valley, and ANCEP is starting to have an increasing presence out there as well. Those two things I just mentioned have potential facility impacts. So there's a couple of ways that that might be addressed and are explored. One is to construct a new building that could house both ANCEP and the middle college and perhaps a rec center. Another way is to get some of that moved into existing space and construct a rec center. There's a lot of things to work out in terms of mixing non-college age students with college age students. And so that's why the options are kind of on the table, but not yet fully defined. Coming out of the pandemic, use of the Massey Theater is starting to grow, and it's a very important part of the identity of this campus. And then there's a strong desire to maintain that setting in the green space, that larger 951 acre Mat-Su Central Park, if you will. And the last is Prince William Sound College, located in Valdez. So it's located right at the edge of Valdez. It's in between downtown Valdez and a residential area. It's actually kind of set in the residential area adjacent to a park you'll see on the next map. Originally an elementary school, it has had some improvements over the years, especially at the main entry area, and construction of the Whitney Museum, which is a highly valued amenity in Valdez that many, many visitors visit every summer. The aspiration is to continue to be the hub of lifelong learning in Valdez. And what's not mentioned here, and probably better on the next page, so I'll get to it, is to develop relationships. I'm going to start with the last bullet point on this first, the collaborators with potential for space sharing. Develop capacity with the high school and other collaborators to support millwright, maritime construction, and mariculture programs. So this is very closely tied to where Valdez as a city is going overall. Valdez is, the economic engine is primarily it being the terminus of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and the ships going around the world full of oil from there. And that's a revenue stream that's slowing. And so I was just part of a team that did the Valdez Waterfront Master Plan as well as the Comprehensive Master Plan. And both of those plans see that is changing. And so the focus in the future is on the waterfront. And so it's nice to see that this campus can support that waterfront ambition by providing the types of training that will be needed for new industries, as well as the types of training that will be needed for the additional housing that both of those Valdez plans anticipate. So with that in mind, there's discussions with finding either some collaborative partners who have the type of space to further develop career technical education, or constructing something like the building in green that's shown here to support that. I think that's most of our content, and we just want to jump into schedule. Jack, I'm going to take that real quickly, and then you can open it up for questions. So previously, we had hoped that we would be on track to present to the Board of Regents a draft master plan this month, at the end of this month, but we realized that engagement process needed to take the time it needed to take. And so the engagement didn't really finish until February, and it kind of trickled into March. So we're adjusting that schedule so that we can now have this type of engagement where we're testing some of these initial ideas before we fully push them into the written document, the master plan. As such, we're taking the summer to receive feedback and push them into the master plan with a goal of getting a draft master plan to the Board of Regents right around Labor Day at the end of the summer, and then have a second reading later in the fall. So Jack, do you want to say some things in closing to open for questions?
Yeah, I want to bring up that what we're trying to do here is we're trying to increase vibrancy and cohesiveness on campus through all the strategies Brian mentioned at the head of the presentation. We want to do that by inviting collaborators in to campus. Those are academic collaborators. They're also community collaborators. We want to increase our attention to the students, to the spaces of student support and student instruction. We want to make ourselves aware of initiatives and goals that the administration has set for us. That includes the Alaska Native Success Initiative, ANSI, UAA 2025, and others. And we hope that the strategies that we've outlined start to address that. These are draft strategies, and we want to hear your input. This is an outline of a draft, and we're here to listen, to understand if those strategies are correct or if they're starting to resonate with you in a good or bad way. And with that, we offer it up to the group to let us know what they think. And we understand if it's just really, really nice outside.
It's really nice. And there have been a few questions through the chat. It looks like Kim and Chris have done a good job of answering those. If you have a question, feel free to send it through the chat, raise your hand, or just shout it out. And if too many people are shouting, I'll put a hand raising rule, but I won't do that until we have that problem.
We're also available constantly for questions and input after the meeting. We don't go off contract. We're here all the time.
Looks like Jody has a question.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for the update on this. I appreciate all the work you have been putting into this and the meetings, town meetings and such. Everything I heard today was all about the students. And so my question is about the faculty who teach all those students. And space for faculty. I'm the head of collection development in the library, and we do as much for faculty as we do for students, and yet nothing I heard today mentioned faculty, space for faculty. There was a question in the chat about collaboration and flexibility of space, but there wasn't any mention about how the instructors of those students are going to be a part of the space and the planning across campus.
Thank you, Jody. I would like to give an initial response because it's an overarching requirement for the campus facilities master plan to provide adequate space and infrastructure and technology to support the faculty in the pursuit of the mission. Like that's baked in to the overarching requirement for accreditation and in Board of Regents policy. So it's almost like the elephant in the room that perhaps we've not even discussed for the good. I think I would offer that that's why we're here, is to hear what have we missed, and that is an overarching requirement for the institutional accreditation. So it goes without saying, but we should say it. And then I'll let somebody else.
Yeah.
I'll let my team fill in any gap that I may have missed.
I can bring up some things that we've heard from faculty and deans and things that we're tracking to help make sure that their needs are served. It's certainly not an all-inclusive list, but we've definitely heard a need for classroom spaces that are more modern, that provide flexibility.
Yep, I can believe that.
Yeah, and so we want to make sure, like especially along the spine, in some of our specialized zones, that we set a goal for providing that. Okay. Making sure that those are provided so that the faculty can do what they need to do and teach the students. You know, when I think we did say that providing a modern and flexible classroom is about putting the students first, but you're right. It's also about making sure that the faculty can do what they need to do. We've heard some.
Yeah, I don't think you've intentionally left the faculty out, but it's to me, it was so glaring that there was never any mention of faculty,
You're absolutely right.
The need for space as well. So yeah, I think, Kim, just putting some basic stuff in there, maybe even at the beginning, that would be most, I think, most useful, and give a better direction for where the planning has been through, what the planning has been through already through some of these town halls and stuff, such.
We also, we want to give time to the other folks with their hand up.
Sorry.
I also want to mention one more thing for the faculty. We've heard a lot of need for faculty to be near the space of instruction to engage students after class. And so we want to think about in the future about that opportunity outside the instruction space, providing a place for touch points for students and faculty engagement. And we will make sure that's a priority.
It looks like Tracy has a question.
Thanks. I'm one of those faculty, so thank you, Jody. Thank you all for your work. I've been here for almost 20 years, and the campus, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's always felt a little bit odd. And your talk about zones and sort of wanting coherent zones has really helped me sort of understand the campus. My question was, I'm intrigued by this idea of using this spine, this river you're talking about for more first and second year experience instruction, I think. Is that new building? Because I mean, there aren't a lot of classrooms, or at least I've never taught along the spine other than a handful of times in Rasmussen. Or like what does that mean for where people are going, for what purpose?
I think the actual design solution hasn't been defined. It's just a goal right now. And I think as we're asking folks for their input on that goal, on that strategy. And after we receive that input, we will further define what that could mean. Because you're right, there are limitations. There's not a lot of classrooms. I mean, there's classrooms in like SSB on the second floor, but some of that space like ECB and SB, those are spaces that are, they're lab spaces.
Chris, you have a question?
Hi, yes. So I work over in the professional studies building. I actually admittedly don't get around the rest of campus much. So I'm going to speak from my perspective here, which, as you guys know, is an old building who held up very well during the earthquake, mind you. But some things that I notice in this building and probably in a lot of other buildings on campus is they're really not designed to support student experience with their technology needs. I mean, that is the world we live in now. Everybody has their laptop, they need their Wi-Fi, they might be there on their iPad. And all of those things need power. And when you're walking around here, you can't find an outlet to save your life. You literally have to go and unlock, like our custodial staff has to go and unlock a classroom just to be able to plug in. And so what I guess what I'm saying is when you're looking at the master plan, it's probably already in your mind, but really be thinking about those modern technology needs, that access to power, signal boosting the Wi-Fi, because this place is dense and it's really hard to get sometimes your Wi-Fi signal. And then, print centers, students need access to that. I know there is the big one in the library, but also like what are some of those like hubs? They may need like a print hub perhaps over on this west end, a print hub maybe over in the east end, someplace where they could even perhaps convene for technology needs, like maybe like a small area set aside as an open computer, access lab. So if they perhaps don't even have their own, that there is a public student space that they could go to on the West Campus. And then of course, staffing, IT support. One of the biggest things that's always on our mind with the pharmacy program is network stability, network power, and then of course those who are there to be able to support and make sure that everything stays up. We are all connected to the internet now with everything that we need. We're all on Google Apps for education. If the network goes down, if we have any problems whatsoever with that, the whole campus is affected. And I think y'all done a pretty good job with what you got, but I hear and I see and I know that there are shortages, and it's just moving forward, making sure that we have the manpower to support the growing technology needs for the campus. And then just one last thing, because I heard faculty, staff too, because we're critical. I know we are. I'm comfortable with saying that that it is faculty, students, and staff. So just keeping them in mind when you're looking at stuff.
That's right.
Yeah, that's really good feedback.
Yeah.
We are at 1:01 right now, which is when we thought we were going to be done, but I want to give it one last chance for someone to raise their hand if they have a comment or a last question to ask. And Jack, if they have additional questions or comments, do they follow up with you? Set
Sure.
the email address you're giving.
Yeah, myself, Chris McConnell, and Kim Mahoney are always available. Any of us are available online at any moment, and we all work pretty intimately together. So if you talk to one of us, you'll talk to all three of us.
All right, well, this is a big group today. I want to thank you for participating, and please do follow up with Jack or Chris or Kim with additional feedback, because we really are testing the waters with these ideas, especially the big ones of moving that first and second year experience to the spine, focusing student services at those two locations, one at the Student Union Wells Fargo and the other at the library area. Let us know what you think about that stuff, and go enjoy the sun. It's a beautiful day.
Thank you so much for attending.
Thanks, everyone.